All right, continuing on with The Beach by Alex Garland. Because my phone, this is actually uh not quite in character, but it turned off partway through. So I'm just gonna, while I still have kind of whatever was talking about in my mind, I'm gonna try to finish it while I still have. Otherwise, I'll probably never get around to it. So anyway, yeah. So throughout the beach, there's um, Richard and Etienne and Francois get there and get to the beach, and they're greeted by a community, and they're all thriving, and they seem to be putting in the work and the uh, just enough the ethic, and kind of they have separate work details that are conscripted to each of them, but they're not like draining, kind of like meaningless work. There's stuff like fishing, and some people get bananas, or some people they go out and harvest stuff or clean dishes, and just different stuff like that, um, that kind of keep the flow of the work camp. So people, well, yeah, everybody pitches in, which seems like an interestingly uh, like just straightforward and common sense kind of thing. Like, it almost seems like there's nothing could go wrong. But here's where things start to slowly get sinister. I also referred to as the one eccentric Scottish guy as Bugs Bunny, but that was actually a different character. It was actually Daffy Duck that he called himself. Some of them, a good deal of them, call themselves like these like kind of like silly cartoon nicknames, and I didn't quite get what the relevance was, what it was, but I just thought like um, but besides for whatever reason, but yeah, so Bugs Bunny was a different character who was the Swedish guy, or I can't remember what his ethnicity, if he was South African or something, but he was uh the person dating Sal. So Sal is the kind of over the head honcho lady. And believe me, it took me like 20 pages to realize she was a girl, because the name was kind of, to be fair, it's a kind of a gender, not really a gendered name, and in the same way that Stacy is in some ways, in some cases. But anyway, so she is kind of the overseer of the place, and she seems to be at first like kind of reasonable. I thought her character seemed to be, like to kind of, she put it to Richard bluntly in a certain way when she was telling him, like, you're not looking for paradise. Like, paradise isn't necessarily here. This is just, it might seem like it to you, and that's all no nice and fine, but this is actually just a, you know we're just human beings, I think. And she seemed kind of down to earth, but as the novel gets on, things start to get more sinister. Things start to kind of take a turn for the worse. So in various episodes, and one starting with there's a food poisoning incident where one of the, I think they're like one of the bass, like this the maybe one of the sharks that they catch actually ends up containing some kind of element too of some trace of food poisoning, and some, these things happen, out in nature, and everybody gets like completely, like, frighteningly sick, and just like, deathly ill. And um, this is where things start to kind of fall apart, like, at the seams a little. I think both Francois and Etienne get it, and Richard gets it, but not as bad. So he's like kind of caring for her. And I forgot to mention, a copy the elephant in the room is the fact that Francois is supposed to be a extremely beautiful lady. Obviously a young French, just like refined, elegant, just come, everything you could ask for in a girl. Pretty much is the way she's described. Long dark hair. I thought Virginie Ledion did a really good job of portraying her. This kind of quick, kind of adventurousness of decision making too. That kind of in places where sometimes the other characters wouldn't. And in this kind of straightforwardness that some French people have about certain things, like how are you feeling about somebody, like they kind of cut to the chase on that in some ways. Not to say all of them, but um so yeah, so he's has these very somewhat conflicted, but definitely like a romantic inclination, and he's like, throughout the whole novel, like, he um can't help but express certain feelings, or like, try to take care of her when she's sick, and then Etienne gets jealous, and that kind of plays in for kind of a love triangle thing in the movie. Obviously spoiling here, but if you haven't seen it, but there's basically Leonardo DiCaprio, Richard, um, does get entangled, to use that use that Smith, what's her name, Jada Pinkett Smith kind of term, the entanglement. But they do get involved in the movie, and I thought that was kind of unnecessary because I felt like the book was almost like not. I felt like one thing I don't know if leveraged some respect, but that the fact that it didn't seem to be overly hung up on and bogged down by it's just another romantic kind of thing where they're just like, oh well, and it turns out that and then because it was, I thought that it would take, if they did, it would kind of just take away from the main kind of important theme of the how human nature can never quite escape itself, or that out in the middle of nowhere, even with like a seemingly concordant group of people, there's always the inevitable kind of um, drudgery of like of death and stuff like that. And that a lot of that happens in this book. Um, so this after the food poisoning, I think like one or two people die from that, and there's a bunch of different people there. There's Kitty, the African I don't know if he's South African, kind of a very kind of gregarious character. And then there's I can't remember his name. Is it Unhygienics? I think was like the guy that did most of the cooking, and he was like a very, also like a very kind of characteristic, very larger than life character, I suppose. Like the way that he's like cooking up all this stuff, and he's like very uh focused on hygiene and people washing their hands and stuff. So I thought that was kind of funny the way he kind of has an OCD kind of thing. Um, anyway, but not to make light of that necessarily too much, but yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so I thought there was some depth, a lot of depth to some of these characters, but I felt like there were some of them seemed like just stand-ins for just kind of the novel, like the author's own views in a sense. Like it felt like Sal, her entire kind of what's the word, like motivations as a character seemed to be like all over the place in a sense. Like it seemed like in one sense she has like a um you know she seems like to have her head on right, and that she's like just doing her part, but then it seems like slowly as like you peel back the layers that she's actually like pretty kind of sadistic, and like like the way she's like holding on to the every last vestige of this beach, and she's trying to hold on to her little community in this little bubble that she's kept up because it's the only. I mean, I do see that now that I kind of articulate it, but yeah, the fact that Sal has a kind of chaotic, but maybe I don't know, an alignment, like a chaotic lawful kind of thing going on, where she's like she will do anything necessary in a utilitarian kind of aspect to keep to keep this place like completely under wraps, like nobody can see it, like, and in fact when Zeph and Sammy show up later on, um I think she actually like kind of really just like tears into Richard, blaming him because he gave them the map and made a kind of a reproduction of the map that kind of was like on a piece of parchment paper or something. And yeah, they got caught wind of this beach community, and they kind of want a piece of it so they could start going by and all and yeah, not to give too much away, but yeah, there's a big final day denouement near the end, obviously, as most of those things are. And there's a everything kind of gets into a there's like a kind of borrowing pop culture kind of of Vietnam kind of era stuff, which is a kind of a running gag too with this whole thing. With these, with like M16s and AK-47s and Viet Cong, in tunnels, and basically this is a dope island pretty much. They have these like marijuana plants that are kept under tight wraps by these Thai guards, and they're all kind of very morally ambiguous guards. They kind of will do anything necessary, like they'll like if it means killing, just to keep this dope stuff under control. So they're very a lot right at the bat, like things are like set up for failure. And not to give too much away, but yeah, there is one final kind of like really just like I thought this part near the end kind of was a payoff in a way, but I felt like even this was kind of I felt like this the entire um purpose of the novel seemed to have multi layers. Like it was a commentary on how communities can go haywire and like even like a this idea of paradise, like this idea of like like that's a I think is a very important theme that I think can be wrote about over and over again, like a fall from paradise, or trying to sustain paradise, trying to once you find it, like trying to keep it, and then all these different conflicting interests and everybody gets all wrapped up in it, and everybody's like human instincts get exaggerated. And I think like even then, even Richard's unlikability as a character kind of even he seems like the most reasonable one in the room, even when he's like going basically crazy near the end of the novel, running around trying to with a kind of hallucinating and Daffy Duck because he shows up too. And I thought and another big kind of criticism I've seen of this novel is the how long it is. And it's not I'm not gonna dig against anything to do with any kind of long novel, and even at 420 something pages, it's not that bad. It's there are novels that are 600, like The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann's, like by 100 pages more than this, and it didn't feel quite like that. But for some reason, the people have said before that this could at least kind of take back 100 pages or so, maybe more. And I think the reason is because it's so dialogue based. There's so much exhaustive and exhausting at times, um, kind of an interplay of these two or exchanges between characters, and the characters sometimes have interesting conversations about like alternate realities and stuff like that, and sometimes they have very banal kind of back and forths that are just kind of fights and kind of kind of just rehashings of stuff that has been said before, or just kind of the main character's own kind of qualms about certain things, and it kind of gets tiring, mainly because even though like certain novels like Roberto Bolaño's 2866, I think it was called, that had some pretty exhausting elements. That was even longer. That was like 800, 900 pages. Um, but that had some uh, pretty exhausting parts where you got fatigued by how many re re iterations of like the rape case of the murders and rapists, I think, that happened in that novel. It's been a while since I read it. I did a review, and I think I talked about this. I hope I did shed some light on that, because there was like a lot of it's something to be said about literature having, it's fine to repeat stuff. There's like a repeating motif, and stuff happens in life a lot. Too. Um, I think John Williams of who wrote Stoner kind of got that too. Like there's like a redundancy to life. A lot of our lives in that sense, maybe realism. But I think if you're gonna do that, I would say try to maybe, and it's his debut novel, so this is um, but yeah, um, can no, I think that's pretty much all I have for it. I could keep kind of going on about a little bit, more of the plot details and stuff I liked or didn't like, but I don't know if there's anything I can really say that hasn't been said before about it. I liked it. I'm not just say that I hated it, but I did have took some issues, and I do have some critiques that I think um you know well have been kind of stated already, but maybe bear repeating. But yeah, that's I think that's all I have for The Beach by Alex Garland, and that's all I have. Yeah, excuse how exhausted I feel, or how tired I am, obviously, because I've just it's later in the day, and I've squeezed a lot into my day, and yeah, I would love to put these more into the and I do them in the day occasionally. But yeah, that's all I have for today, and yeah.